This is The Weekly on ClickOrlando.com with Justin Warmoth.
Good morning, I'm Justin Warmoth. Despite progress in reducing childhood poverty, almost 400,000 kids are still impacted across the state. The effects can be devastating, with children from poor backgrounds more likely to experience abuse, suffer from poor health, and drop out of school. This morning, Andry Sweet, the CEO of Children's Home Society of Florida, is here to break down the staggering number of local kids impacted and how the nonprofit works to keep families together and out of foster care. This is such an important topic that we're discussing this morning and the impacts that it's having on so many people in Central Florida. I don't know if folks really understand the scope of this. So give us the statistics on the amount of children who are currently in poverty in Central Florida.
Yeah, well, let me start at the state level, because there's almost 400,000 children who are living in poverty, and half of them are living in only 15% of Florida's zip codes, and several of those zip codes are here in Central Florida. 58,000 children alone just in Orange County are living in poverty.
And the impacts that has on not just food and basic living necessities, the impacts that have are so wide-ranging, right?
And you think about all the stages in a child's life, like going all the way back to birth, and how important that child and parent bonding and attachment is, and building trust in those very early years. And when parents are worried about where they're going to live and are they going to have enough food for their children, they're distracted, and they sometimes can miss cues that are so important in that child's development. So it impacts that parent and child bonding. It impacts, we sometimes think that, it's the parents who are worried about the children. I'm here to tell you the children worry about the parents. They worry about their parents. They worry about, is mom going to get enough hours at work so that we can have food at night? They're worried, just like the parents are worried.
So talk about where you step in. The Children's Home Society of Florida. Where do you step in, and how do you help these families?
So, well, let me start with our mission. It's building bridges to success for children. And so that birth through adulthood, children need to be safe and protected. And so look at it like a bridge. We're trying to keep them safe along that journey. And so at Children's Home Society, we do that in many ways. And it means helping, families, in the very early stages of life. So Healthy Families is one of our programs. We work with parents, new parents with babies, and Early Head Start, where we're helping parents to help their children to read and to do playtime with their children. All of those things are important for a child's development. And again, when you're living in poverty, you can be distracted by so many things, and you need resources and support. So we also provide that support in schools, in what we call community partnership schools, which really provide a hub and a safe place in the school for kids and families to get help.
The struggle for these children, and yes, the entire family, but specifically kids who are born into this, and the success rate they have in life. It's a staggering statistic, and it's really sad that these children are born into this with the statistics so out of their favor.
It is. I mean, some will say that your zip code is more predictive than your DNA, and we see that. We see it in the odds that face these children. So children are more likely to be abused and neglected, 5 times more likely to drop out of high school, and when they do, 63 times more likely to be incarcerated, and that intergenerational cycle of poverty continues. And so the odds are stacked against them. And at Children's Home Society, what we're trying to do is change those odds to opportunities, right? Like how do we lift up that next generation so that they're going to be successful and break that cycle of poverty?
It's I imagine that so many of these families have trust issues when it comes to intervention from outside, right? They're worried that if they reach out for help, then there's a chance that their kids are taken away from them by Child Protective Services, right?
Yeah. So, and let me talk about, kind of backing up a little bit about poverty and neglect. Certainly children who live in poverty are more likely to be neglected, but poverty in and of itself is not neglect. These parents are faced with impossible choices. Right. Do I pay the electric bill, or do I buy the formula and diapers? Do I pay for the child care, or do I leave my child with someone who I'm not so sure about? They make these choices every day, and sometimes it does get them, touching on that child welfare system. Some of these parents had bad experiences themselves, with those systems in the past. So there is a lot of fear and anxiety even to ask for help. Because they don't want to be caught up in the system. They want to help their kids. They want a better life for their kids.
And making sure that the kids do not end up in foster care, because I know the statistics are perhaps even worse when it comes to kids who do end up in foster care and their success later in life and their overall health.
Get even worse, yes.
They get even worse.
Yes.
So that in a nutshell is what you guys are trying to prevent.
We are trying to prevent the need for foster care, right? So how can we engage with families in a safer place, a more trusting place where they can receive the help? And we walk alongside them, right? I mean, like, we don't tell parents what to do or what their plan is. I mean, these are all voluntary services. So our Healthy Families and our community partnership schools, we help the parents identify their goals. Like, where do you want to be in 5 years? What do you want to be able to provide for your children? Let's set those goals, and we don't do it for them, but we can help them, achieve them.
It's the mental health part of this. I just have to imagine, and you mentioned kids worrying about their parents, but probably older siblings taking on the role sometimes as a parent.
Right.
And making sure their brothers and sisters are fed, do their homework, get to school. And
imagine the anxiety as you start becoming an older teenager and you're a senior in high school and you're looking at college, right? And you're like, but how can I do that when my siblings need me to be working and supporting the family? I mean, the guilt that they feel and that anxiety over these decisions, it's no wonder there's a mental health crisis.
I'm curious too, I don't think that there's some sort of magic word that will fix this crisis. This might be here for as long as we're alive, unfortunately. But how do we prevent it from getting worse as it's gone down that path?
So, and that's where these building bridges come into play, right? So it's figuring out how we create that safety and protection around children throughout all those stages of life. In our community partnership schools, I want to really start there because, and I'm going to tell you some success stories of that, because that model of really engaging in the community, in a community where poverty is high, right? And we build relationships and build that trust by bringing in the trusted leaders of that community, our faith leaders, business leaders, the school principals, so that we listen to what's important to the community. We listen to the families, and then we rally all the assets of the community around that community partnership school. So I really want to give a shout out to University of Central Florida. They are a founding partner in this model that's been developed. Also Orange County Public Schools. And together we sign a 25-year MOU, an agreement and a commitment to the community that we're going to be there to help lessen these odds, to bring in resources, to create safe places like the hub in the school, so that families and students can trust our nonprofit community and folks who are there with resources to help them.
Coming up, Sweet will share one of the many success stories from the services they provide, plus how the community can help get results for families struggling in Central Florida. Stay with us.
This is The Weekly on ClickOrlando.com with Justin Warmoth.
Welcome back. This morning we're tackling the topic of childhood poverty, something that impacts more than 58,000 kids in Orange County alone. Growing up in an under-resourced community too often paves the way for long-lasting consequences. But thanks to the Children's Home Society of Florida, there are more and more Florida children making it out and having success in life.
So I do want to share with you one of the students we saw in one of our high schools here. She would come to school with her hair literally over her face. She was just visibly depressed and had the weight of the world on her shoulders. You know, her mother struggled with a mental illness. Oftentimes they were homeless, and so she was trying to go to school, coming from, you know, a homeless shelter and not knowing where she was going to be, you know, living at night. And she, you know, she carried that into school every day. But little by little, she started reaching out to the folks in the hub and talking with a woman who works for us named Cortesia, who became her mentor. And I can't tell you how her affect changed over that time. She brightened up. She not only got more involved in school, she stayed and did a lot of the after-school activities, but she became a leader. She became a student leader on the Student Leadership Council. She came with us to Tallahassee to advocate. So she was a Senate page working in Tallahassee with some of our legislative leaders. And she went on to college, and she is now living in Texas. She owns her own business, so she Airbnb. She does like a lot of the marketing around that, and you know, and is getting her certification to do wealth management and wealth advising. I mean, like she defied the odds, right? And that's what we see is when you work with the children and you start taking that weight off their shoulders, they will exceed all your expectations.
When they're born with that weight, I imagine too, you know, that is a fantastic story and a success story that I imagine makes you proud of the work that you do. But can you talk about intervention at an early age? And I'm talking about more so getting these kids ready for life, because so much of the brain development is before the age of 5, right?
90% of the brain is developed before age 5, and those executive level functioning skills. So when I talked about, you know, babies who, you know, in the very first years of life, it's how they build trust with others, if there's a secure environment, and how they trust their caregivers. If that part of the brain doesn't develop, you can imagine down the road the ability to have empathy for others, the ability to, you know, to feel safe in your own space, the level of anxiety that you may feel, and so how can you function as an adult when that basic area of your brain has not been developed?
And there's probably added trauma on top of it.
It is. It's, you know, particularly in some of these cases, if there is, you know, true neglect. I mean, if the child needs medical attention and they're not, and they don't have access to health care. We see children with terrible asthma problems who that's been unaddressed for years and years. When they come into the community partnership school, we now have our healthcare partners like Orange Blossom Family Health, who are right there on site to do medical, dental, anything that the kids need. And one of the students we work with, he suffered from terrible asthma, and he would be out of school a lot. But since we had the health clinic on site, he was able to get his inhalers right down, you know, down the school hallway from the clinic, and he didn't miss school, right? So just little things like that can make such a difference.
I know that you and so many of the nonprofits that we have here in the state of Florida, but in particular Central Florida, are in cohesion, or really starting to rely on each other and use that resource, because the same people that you help are being helped by, for instance, the Second Harvest Food Bank of Central Florida, right?
Yes.
And so if you guys are talking to the same families and the same children, to have that relationship, I imagine, is next level and a game changer almost.
It is, and it's so important for the parents too, because they can access those services, you know, usually right in the school. But our partners are key to that. So the Boys and Girls Club, No Kid Hungry, Farm Share, Second Harvest Food Bank. And the partners look different in every community. So our schools up in Pensacola or in Jacksonville, they're made up of those partners in their communities, and we all work together. And we have a saying: it's a culture of yes, because we know there's red tape and there's all kinds of barriers that can be put in front of families to get the services they need. And our job is to just, you know, hack away at that red tape and make sure that any child or family who needs help has a place to get it. So.
I'm curious how, I imagine there might be someone watching right now, our viewers at home, wondering how they can help out in this cause.
Yeah.
How can the community get involved to help?
So many ways. There's a lot of volunteer opportunities. So we talked about the babies. We have volunteers who put together baby bins, with diapers and formulas, and they go out with the home visitors and get those to the families who need that support. We have volunteers. First, I want to give a shout out to the business community because they have stepped up in a big way. So Disney held a FAFSA, the financial aid forms that kids have to fill out for college. Had a great event out at Evans. 188 students and their parents got assistance filling out those forms. You can't believe what a barrier it is just filling out that application, that stands in the way of a kid going to college. And so Disney was out there, volunteers were out there, all helping to make sure that those forms were filled out. There's so many ways volunteers can help, and there's so many ways the business community can help out. I mentioned what Disney did. Universal actually sponsors one of our schools at Eccleston. Florida Blue, all of them are right there with us, trying to because we all care about the community that has so much potential. Because these kids are resilient. When you think about when I was in school, I worried about the test I was going to take the next day, or who was going to sit next to at lunch, right? Like I didn't worry.
Who's dating who?
Right. I didn't worry about my parents. I didn't worry about my little brother, right? These children navigate some of life's most challenging adversities, and so to me, it's like the potential of those students to be greatly successful, like the girl I mentioned, is huge. I mean, they are our hope for our workforce in the future. So getting the business community involved, we can actually create a pipeline for these students to get careers, on the other end of it. Some of the students in those schools have come back and worked for Children's Home Society. So as mentors, as healthcare coordinators, after-school coordinators, and they are giving back to their community.
And they've been through it, so they have that perspective on what that's like.
They're the best role model, and they grew up in that
Success
community.
Stories, yeah.
Right. I mean, like what a great way to build trust is to have somebody who's walked in your shoes and who lived right down the road from you.
I want to end with this. We talked about how the community can get involved, but how can someone at home who perhaps is watching this and they feel like they need your help? What can they do? How can they reach out to make sure that they are also get the help that you guys provide? Sure.
So all of our information is on our website. I'm sure we're going to show that here, but we like I mentioned, we have a number of services across Orange, Osceola, Seminole, Lake, Sumter, Brevard, all over. So reach out to us. Oftentimes you can get all the information right there from the web and how to connect with us and contact us. But we, we're here for all of those families who want a better life for their kids and really just, need that extra help.
And my thanks to Andry Sweet for joining us this morning and shining a light on the challenges so many of our neighbors are facing. By the way, we have posted a link to their website in this story on clickorlando.com/weekly. I'm Justin Warmoth. Hope you have a great Sunday.